Hello, everybody, and welcome to Hangouts with Visionary Leaders. On today's show, I'm going to be talking to Jessica Hadari, the founder of FEM Talks, which is an alliance for women educators, healers, and leaders. So, welcome once again, everybody, to Hangouts with Visionary Leaders on Air. I am your host, Lisa Ingalls. I'm a visionary coach. I help emerging visionaries and thought leaders who know that their work in the world is also a part of their own personal journey and they're part of their own personal awakening to overcome self-doubt, confusion, and excuses so that they can make a difference in the world doing what they're here to be doing. So you can learn more about my services and my programs by visiting me at www.interstatecoaching.com. While you're there, you can pick up my free report on my 5-step practice for creating radical change. Now, this show is all about bringing visionary leaders together to give guidance, support, and inspiration to those of us who might have these huge ideas, but we don't really know where to start, or anyone who might be thinking to themselves, oh my God, can I really pull this idea off? Or maybe you're just a visionary leader who's frustrated because you've spent a lot of time and energy into your ideas and your dreams, but they don't seem to be getting off of the ground. Well, whatever your situation is, the thing is that visionary leaders really do have different challenges than most people. They don't tend to follow the crowd. They are definitely trailblazers, and along the way, they can often feel isolated and alone and encounter big feelings of self-doubt and sometimes be their own worst critics. So this show is going to give you the tools and resources and the inspiration that you need in order to find your way in the world as a visionary leader. Now, more and more, everyday women, women around the world are emerging and reclaiming their role as visionary leaders within their communities, but also globally. And as this emergence continues, there's what I believe a huge growing need for our feminine leaders to receive the support that they need so that they can share their wisdom and their gifts and live prosperous lives and do their work in the world. So 4 years ago, Jessica Hadari saw that her community here in the San Francisco Bay Area was the home to a bunch of amazing women who were involved in work that was transforming their communities and transforming the world, but those women didn't really have a platform to share their projects, to connect with other women, to collaborate and go over business ideas together. So she decided to create an alliance. This alliance is called FEM Talks, and it's an alliance of women educators, healers, and leaders. So today, we're going to be talking to Jessica about FEM Talks and the FEM Talks model. How did she come up with this FEM Talks model? We'll be talking about how her model and FEM Talks has given thousands of women the opportunity to shine in their community and beyond, and why FEM Talks is perhaps a new paradigm for women's leadership. So welcome to the show, Jessica. It's so great to have you here.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be here. And I love that intro. I loved what you wrote about FEM Talks, but also what we're going to be diving into today. It's just beautiful. So I'm really grateful to be here.
Yeah, I think it's good. Maybe I can set a little bit of context why I even asked you on the show. So I will tell the audience that I live in Jessica's community. So I was writing the description for this based on my own experience of like, damn, I have a lot to share here, and I need some support. And it was really funny because I came across FEM Talks. Actually, I was out at Harbin Hot Springs with my fiance. We were in the kitchen, little story here, making dinner, and ended up meeting another couple there. And it was actually the guy from the couple who said, do you know who Jessica Hadari is? Because you would get along with her, and you need to, like, maybe you should be a speaker at FEM Talks. I'm like, yeah, what's FEM Talks? I need to figure this thing out. So I found out about FEM Talks through a guy, which is sort of funny, not even a woman, but he clearly supports women leadership. And So my experience was really amazing. The first FEM Talks experience that I went to, and I'm going to let you, Jessica, explain what FEM Talks is so it puts it into context. But my first experience of going to FEM Talks back in the fall, I was like, oh my God, this is what I've been needing. This is so different than anything else that I've been searching for, networking and connecting with other visionary leaders and women particularly. So I'm going to leave it at that. That's how I found out about Jessica and why I knew I needed to interview her and have her on the show at some point. So I'm going to let you, Jessica, why don't you tell us a little bit more about where was this vision inspired from, and what made you really decide, okay, I need to do this?
Well, I thank you. I love that you found out about FEM Talks at Harbin. It's one of my favorite escape places. So that's really wonderful, and that a man suggested it is fantastic. So I on one hand, I've been a part of women's circles, and both as a participant and also as someone who hosts them. Excuse me. And that's been something that I've been very passionate about, being connected to women's circles and women's works and women's workshops for pretty much my whole adult life. At the same time, I had this moment when my son was really little, and it was actually during a time, I think because I had a small child, and so I wasn't as connected to women's community at that time. Unfortunately, I had just moved to the Bay Area, and just a lot of my attention was wrapped up in this new little being. But I remember being in the locker room at the downtown Berkeley YMCA, which I love. It's such a great resource for new moms or for anybody, because it is such a great community, as well as being a fitness center. And I remember walking into the women's dressing room and realizing that I actually had fear that would come up when I would approach a group of women. I think there was like a circle of women that were chatting about this or that in the locker room, and I remember just being in this, maybe I had just gotten done with exercise or yoga or something, so I was very aware of my internal experience and my sensations, and I noticed this wave of fear, and I recognized in that moment that there was a part of me that was actually afraid of women. I felt intimidated, especially approaching women in a group. And I was like, that's so interesting. That's really interesting. It's revealing itself to me right now. And so I just was like, okay, well, I'm going to surround myself with women, because I think that there's probably an aspect of this that's really deep, maybe related to my relationship with my mother, or not having grown up with sisters or whatever. I didn't even really know, but I knew there was something in my deep within me, or my soul, or whatever you want to call it, that felt like, okay, this is something that I'm ready to look at and maybe heal and just see what comes out of it. So that was kind of the beginning of me being really dedicated to being in women's community as a spiritual path. And so over the course of the years, I was involved in circles and produced some women's weekends. We did some really deep work. I brought in women that I knew that did really deep work with their clients, and we just had these just delicious events of self-discovery. And I realized that I just wanted more of that, but I couldn't energetically. I didn't have the energy to create weekend after weekend after weekend. It's a lot of work. So I gathered all of the women that I knew into my home and had a potluck and was like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this monthly event that's, part wisdom share, where we all get to share wisdom with one another. It's part networking event. So, if you need a resource for a babysitter, or you need a chiropractor, or an acupuncture, or a holistic health practitioner, or a coach, or a therapist, or whatever, we can just look within our women's community to get all of those needs met. But then also there's an aspect of the deep connection that happens in a women's circle, that kind of conscious relationship, conscious relating between women as a spiritual path. And if everybody was a yes, and And so that was really the birth of FEM Talks 4 years ago. Yeah.
It's really a beautiful, that's a beautiful story, and I think you hit on something that speaks to a lot of women, which are these days when we're modern women, right? We are busy, we have a lot of things going on. I think women tend more towards this, the nurturing, and a lot of women have spiritual practices, and still in our modern society there's an underlying, can be, I won't say blanket statement, there can be an underlying feeling of competitiveness and competition. And those show up as those thoughts that are comparative thoughts, where we're comparing ourselves to other women, and this bringing of women together to share wisdom, to support each other and hold each other in a space so that we can actually do more work in the world, is such a beautiful space that you're coming from here. So I absolutely love that. And I'm curious how you ended up on the FEM Talks. Like, to me, I think of TED Talks. Were you inspired by TED Talks, or how did you come up with the name FEM Talks for this alliance?
I was inspired by TED Talks. I actually had a different name. Initially was FEM Evolution, and then I put the invitation out for kind of the initial gathering, and a close girlfriend contacted me because she was just about to launch her FEMvolution, so very close to FEM Evolution, FEMvolution. And so it just, I felt like, okay, this is, it just felt like her thing. So it was this kind of search for what is the right name. So I think it was absolutely inspired by TED Talks. And now there's the TEDx Women, and definitely TED Talks includes women visionaries and speakers. So, but initially, I think the inspiration was there, so was kind of fun to play around with that.
Yeah.
And it seems to have taken off. I don't know that I intended that to be like the umbrella name for these events, but it seems like almost every event I create, whether it's FEM Talks or not, people always want to call it FEM Talks. So so it's kind of taken on a life of its own.
Yeah, and so that's a good little segue into the model of FEM Talks, because it's very structured, the way that you have it. And I'll say that in that structure, it feels very held as a safe space to be, which I think is great, because I know I personally, although I love talking and I don't have any problem getting out there, especially Google Hangouts and being in front of people and crowds of people, but when it comes to like networking, I actually am quite shy. People are like, really, Lisa? And one of the things that I noticed within the model that you have for FEM Talks is it feels very safe and very inviting. So I wonder if you might be willing to talk a little bit more about what is it like for someone who has never experienced FEM Talks, who's never gone to a FEM Talks, and we're talking globally here, people who are able to view this, so people might not be able to come to Berkeley to come to a monthly meeting. Talk a little bit more, if you would, about the structure, the model of FEM Talks that you've set up.
I think one of the most important pieces that I think a lot of people don't even recognize, because it's kind of this not necessarily invisible, but it's part of the container, is that I have a team of about 25 volunteers that are helping to run the event. And the important piece about that is, number one, I think there are a lot of women that are nourished by the act of being of service. So it gives women, not everybody has that desire, that hunger. It's almost like a philanthropic side, but to be of service to some kind of community cause or whatever. So the women that have that, get enjoyment out of that kind of thing, it gives at least 25 of them an opportunity to be nourished in that way. and be in those support roles. So each woman who's on the volunteer team gets to pick and choose her role so that she feels like she's in a task or a position that really fills her up. So that's one piece, because it's important to me as well that when women arrive that they feel really warmly welcomed. So I'm always looking at how can I make the welcoming team more welcoming, how can I make the registration process more smooth, so that women can just show up and just immediately feel taken care of. So that's really, really important to me, because I've even in the Bay Area, I've shown up to other women's events or even other workshops or whatnot, and I have had the experience sometimes in the past of showing up and feeling disregarded or unwelcome, or like there was kind of frazzle and urgency happening, and so I didn't feel like taken care of. And so that's just really, really important to me, that the women feel welcomed and taken care of. So that's one big piece of setting the container. I think the other piece is, in terms of the structure of the evening, the women come in, there's always some form of movement, because I think for a woman to drop out of her busy day and be in her body, whether it's we come together and do some dancing together or some kind of embodied meditation, or it might be something as simple as just having the women pair up and just take some breaths together, and then find another partner and just look into her eyes and take some breaths with her. I think that's a really important piece. It's just like you kind of get out of that the same thing that you get out of doing yoga or exercise or sitting and meditating. It creates, a different state of the mind, so that I think when they're ready to go into the workshop portion of the evening, then they can just receive whatever information is available. So that being said, we always have 3 women presenters that speak under topics ranging from sexuality to entrepreneurship. Last year we did a topic about how do you take care of ill or dying parents. We've had topics around relationship and spirituality. So there's always this workshop element. And I think the other thing that makes FEM Talks special that I've heard, I go out and I do a lot of speaking and presenting. And as a presenter, I don't always feel taken care of. Like I'm either searching through multiple emails or texts or whatever for the information I need, or location, or just whatever, just the just the nitty-gritty details. And which is one thing I appreciate about you, Lisa, is that joining you on this hangout was just super easy. You took care of me. It was all very clear what you needed from me, what I needed to do. So I think of my role as a gatekeeper, but I'm also there to safeport not only the audience members, but I'm there to safeport the speakers, so that they just get to show up and just be in their brilliance. So that's really important. And before each event, I get together with all of the speakers and their assistants, anyone involved in production, and we have a prayer circle and just really connect and drop in. And so that we're all also holding space for the women as they arrive, and I think that's something that is just really special to me, at least. So I feel really connected with all the women on that team for that particular month, that particular event.
I think something that you speak to here that I would love to point out is that you offer, within FEM Talks model, you didn't say this, so you totally correct me if I'm wrong, but within this model there is the opportunity for women, whether they see and claim themselves as a visionary leader and they're out in the world and like, yeah, I'm a visionary leader, I'm a out there, to the woman who hasn't yet quite claimed it yet, but I believe that we all have a visionary leader within us. You, within the model of FEM Talks, offer the opportunity for women to participate on many different levels. You spoke to 3 of them just now. They can volunteer and be a supporter of visionary leaders. They can participate by being in the audience. And they can also participate by being one of the speakers. I think it's really, really cool in that model. I don't know if you have anything to say about that, or obviously that was well planned out on your part from years of doing stuff, but any comments that you have?
I do have comments. You know, I've been involved in collaborations where there is hierarchy, and that's something that, you know, a lot of people engage in that type of collaboration. I've also been in collaborations where certainly there's guidance, there's structure, there's, you know, there's leadership, but where everybody is like nobody's being seen or held as higher or more important than anybody else. And that's what I'm really interested in, the inclusivity versus exclusivity. So I really hold the intention, the underlying intention and prayer, if you will, that I'm holding for FEM Talks at all times is that every woman is a thought leader. And, or like you said, every woman is a visionary leader, whether it's within her family or her community or her church or with her clients or, you know, whatever. What happens in a lot of organizations is that the speakers are kind of are sought after. So a lot of organizers will reach out to find speakers, like bigger and better and fancier speakers, which is beautiful. I definitely have big, better, fancy speakers on my stage. But the interesting thing is that once I realized that reaching out for bigger and better was actually creating a separation, it was actually out of alignment with the FEM Talks vision, which is ultimately about endorsing every woman as stepping into roles of educators, teachers, healers, of any variety. And I started to open the stage up for any woman who had something to say under these different potent topics. And it was interesting because when I did that, that's when a lot of my 6- and 7-figure women speakers started reaching out to me to be on the FEM Talks stage. So there was something energetic that happened there when I just really aligned the FEM Talks model with the vision of everybody's included, everybody's a thought leader. Then it's interesting, then I actually have never had to reach out for a speaker since then. You know, it's just all these incredible women come to me and want to speak on the FEM Talks stage. So it's a wonderful opportunity for women that are professional speakers, and that's how they make their living. It's a fabulous audience. Just very, I've been told it's a very warm, welcoming audience. So women that are doing, you know, professional speaking, and that's how they make their living, they love speaking at FEM Talks. And then women that maybe it's their very first talk they've ever given, it seems to be a very positive experience. And there's something amazing that happens when there is an intention of unconditional love and unconditional sisterhood, and where everyone's welcome, that every single woman that steps up onto that stage ends up being brilliant. That it really doesn't matter. I mean, all of the women in the audience are amazing, what they're up to and what they're creating, authors and PhDs, you know, but also, you know, moms, housewives, women of every age and experience. And it doesn't matter how experienced of a speaker they are, when in that environment, that container of unconditional acceptance, and a kind of a presupposition that every woman is brilliant, the women that step up there, it's like every single month we're crying, we're laughing. It's just such a moving experience to just see women step up in an environment that has them feel so welcomed and comfortable. And I think that's what makes it an attractive stage, but also attractive for the audience, because I think the audience picks up on that inclusivity.
Yeah, absolutely. I muted myself accidentally. Absolutely, I think that's where the thing that I felt for sure, just coming to the first FEM Talks and being in the audience and feeling, oh my gosh, and there's something different about this, and I couldn't put my finger quite on it because it was just a feeling sense that I got as you speak to that all-inclusivity for women to be who they are, and when that container of unconditional love is present, then of course we're going to feel safe. When we feel safe, it's okay for us to step into our brilliance. And I think what FEM Talks does in this model is that it gives women the opportunity to stand in their brilliance where in any other area of their life they might not have that opportunity. I know that they might have opportunities as well, but this for sure gives them an opportunity on a regular basis to be in a space where it's okay to be in your brilliance and you're loved in your brilliance, perfect with all of your imperfections. And I think it's so key how I love the insight that you have about the divide that was actually being created when you were inviting bigger and bigger speakers up into FEM Talks, and you realized, oh wait, that's creating a divide. And that quick realignment and readjusting to what the intent is for the model of FEM Talks and how it helps women just put it where it's meant to be, to help all visionary leaders, all women visionary leaders. So I'm going to actually share a comment from Delisa who says, I love collaboration. I believe it's the answer to how our species will be able to live together peacefully. Yeah, this idea of the collaboration. What type of women would you say come to FEM Talks? Who are the types of women that come?
You know, I would say that probably about 90% of the women in the community are themselves entrepreneurs. They're healing practitioners, therapists, authors, coaches, women that own their own small business. So that's interesting that that's just been a natural, it seems to just naturally attract, women in business. And the range of age is actually really interesting to me. I mean, it's anywhere from 25 to 85, and I would say probably the median age is like 35 to 65. So that kind of, like, women, I think, who are just really at that, I think of those ages, like that, 35 to 65 is when women are truly creating they're creating their body of work, they're doing their teaching, they're doing their deep work, or at least they're in the process of discovering that. But it seems like that's kind of such a ripe age, and so it does seem to draw mostly women in that that kind of 30-year arc. I would say that most of the women have a spiritual bent. They consider themselves spiritual in some way, I'm not sure. I'd actually be curious to know, just from your perspective, having been in the audience, like what you saw when you looked around, because I notice I have a particular lens that I look at the FEM Talks women through. So I'm always curious, like, how did you perceive the women that were there?
Yeah, I think you're pretty right on. There was a huge range. I remember a couple women, the very first one that I was at, stood up, and they were clearly in their mid-20s. Like, they were very young, vibrant women. And then I was sitting next to a woman who was quite a bit older than me, probably at least in her 60s or so. So it was such a huge range, and I think that says something for the model that you have, that you're within this model honoring women and their wisdom, no matter what age they're at, and allowing them to stand in their brilliance. I'm curious, what, from your perspective of having now 4 years just of FEM Talks under your belt, not to mention all of the years before of doing women's wisdom circles, what do you think is the biggest challenge that women who are, well, let's just even talk about women entrepreneurs, women in business, since that's the main people that you see coming to FEM Talks. What do you think that their biggest challenge is?
They're
one of their biggest challenges.
I think, well, there were actually two that came to mind. One is, interestingly enough, I mean, I know there are people that are watching this that don't live in the Bay Area, but I think in urban settings, and particularly in the Bay Area, there are lots of events and opportunities to connect, and yet I think that a lot of women, or people in general, are still I think of 2014 and the next few years being a time of releasing old paradigms, and I think one of those old paradigms is the lone wolf
Yes.
paradigm. I
Oh, I'm
think that
so with you. Yes.
it's like we go to our trainings to become coaches or therapists or whatever it is that we are, and so that's a wonderful, usually community experience, and then we're kind of like unleashed out into the world. And I think unfortunately a lot of the business training that healers get and educators get is a very lone wolf mentality, unfortunately. And actually, that lone wolf mentality is not a very lucrative mentality either, or prosperous. And so I think to go back to your question, one of the issues I see a lot of women entrepreneurs dealing with is just trying to shed that paradigm of the lone wolf. And so I think FEM Talks, among many other wonderful events and meetups, gives entrepreneurs or women an opportunity to actually come together to create alliances, partnerships, to resource share different ideas, which I think is actually really important to a really healthy, thriving business. And the other thing that I see that I think actually is dovetailed with that is that another old paradigm, I think women in particular are in the process of shedding, is the paradigm of the starving woman, starving healer paradigm. I've got women in the FEM Talks community that are, playing at the 6- and 7-figure mark. Not that that has to be anyone's goal, but there's definitely that end of the spectrum. And there's also women in the community that are just, they're just in the beginning stages of trying to figure out how to create right livelihood with their healing practice, because they weren't taught how to do so through their education. And so I think that just trying to kind of bring those women together more and more, because I think there's a lot that happens just through the osmosis of that connection, to just that the wisdom sharing that happens just by being in one another's presence.
Yeah, I think I love how you say that, the lone wolf or the lone wolverine. I know as visionary leaders, as I mentioned in the intro, we have big ideas, and sometimes it does feel lonely. They're like, oh my God, can I do this? And I'm gonna go and be woman and get the training that I need, and I'm gonna do this. And that symptom of the lone wolf, I love that vision, is really true, and I can attest that FEM Talks is a model that that does help with that and gives women the support that they need, so they don't have to feel alone. And then to go to the point of the starving artist or the starving healer, how would you say that FEM Talks in the model helps with that piece of the big challenge for women?
Yeah, I think that, and two sides of the same coin. One is I have gotten feedback from the women that get on the stage. There are different ways to be on the stage. You can be a keynote, you can be a presenter, you can be what we call a warm-up diva, which is that you're leading some movement or dance or meditation or something, or you can be a sponsor, which also gives you a little bit of stage time. So there's all these different lengths of time that you can be up there, and I just continually get feedback from the women that get up there that they just get like tons of sign-ups and come away with ultimately lots of new clients. So that's one way, is that, just from doing 3 minutes on stage or 10 minutes or 20 minutes, you could completely change your private practice or fill your practice, for the next few months very easily. I actually, just a side note from that, I'm not an advocate of my speakers, selling from the stage. I don't want my audience to feel like they're constantly getting bombarded with, sales pitches. And so most of my speakers actually offer free offerings, free consultations or free teleclasses or whatever, so that there's an air of generosity from the audience perspective, but then that actually gets the speakers more sign-ups. and so that they can then reach out and connect with those people more deeply, over time. And I've heard that that's been very lucrative for a lot of the women that get on the stage. The other side of the coin is that in the audience, I think, like I was saying earlier, there is something that happens, which is, if you're checking out a speaker who's a professional speaker, or maybe she's playing it kind of maybe 2 steps ahead of where you're at. It's very interesting to just kind of pick up on, like, what is she doing? What is she saying? How is she being? And how can I emulate that as a woman in my business? And maybe it's like use that as an inspiration, it's almost like a live vision board. It's like, oh, that's really, she's very charismatic. Like, what is it about her? So I think there's this kind of exchange that happens, and sometimes our topics do go into entrepreneurship, and so then the audience is actually learning tools and strategies around growing their business. So I think all of those ways. Yeah.
I'm going to pull up another comment here from a volunteer for FEM Talks, Katrina Paulson, who says, as one of those who has volunteered at FEM Talks for 3 years, I agree. It was totally a pleasure and an even exchange of energy to support FEM Talks and creating that container on a monthly basis. It's so thrilling to support and be supported by the young women at heart. I'm reading now because it went off the page, but it's so thrilling to support and be inspired by the young and the young at heart women entrepreneurs.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I love Katrina. Katrina Paulson is just such a wonderful mentor and friend and coach, and she was just such a steady kind of the core volunteer team for years, just completely out of service, out of love, and I love you, Katrina. I'm so glad you're watching.
So, Jessica, let's pull this together with maybe one last question here that I have for you, which is, how do you think that FEM Talks represents a new paradigm in women's leadership?
I think probably just on a concrete level, I think just the fact that there's, each event really pulls together a whole panel of women that can give all of these really unique perspectives based on their life experience. So a lot of seminars and workshops that are wonderful, I love, will feature like 1 or 2 speakers, and that's fine, that's beautiful, but I think there's something that happens when there's like a whole, I don't know, the word river is coming to mind, like a river of women that are sharing their different bits of wisdom. One of the things that we do at the end of a lot of our events is actually do an open mic. So we'll open up the mic for any woman who wants to just give, just a minute of, hot tip or wisdom around the topic. Women can just come up from the audience. So I think there's something about wisdom sharing, and I know I've mentioned that earlier, but I think that's actually really the key. That's one of the things that makes an event attractive. People really want to be seen and heard, and they don't necessarily want to just sit in the audience and be talked at. And so I think the fact that it's very interactive, I always have the speakers do interactive exercises and processes, so it's a very embodied way of learning, but also just that knowing that when I'm in the audience that it could be me up there, if I wanted to, and there's something about that being seen and heard and appreciated that I think is deeply healing, but it also is it also lends to that true collaboration. Every woman's voice is important.
Yeah, and I think that you totally hit it on the nail for me right there. One of our most basic human needs is connection, and to be seen and to be heard and not talked at, which so many of these, like as you mentioned, there's a lot of women visionaries are going out there and they're going to all of these trainings, and you're really just being talked at throughout the training. You're not, and of course you're learning something, but in my opinion, there's been a disconnect for us, and as women, we have not that we're different than men in the need for connection, but that's definitely a deep part of who we are. And to get that reconnection somewhere, to be seen and be heard, is critical. So I love I love that part about what you said, because I think it just hits it on the nail, and I couldn't agree with you more on that. So tell us just a little bit more about what you're doing right now, any projects that you're doing, and how can people get a hold of you, get in touch with you if they want to learn more about what you're doing, work with you?
Beautiful. Oh, thank you. Well, a little bit earlier I had the FEM Talks website on the down here. I'll go ahead and just flash it real quick again. So anybody who lives in the Bay Area can go to femtalks.org and get a free ticket for our events, which happen in Berkeley. But we also do some online awesome stuff too. We do calls or things that are online. So it's, you can also find a resource there. I actually love teaching people, because I have this long history of 15 years of creating events and seminars and filling my workshops and programs. I love teaching healers how to fill their workshops and programs. And so, you're welcome to visit me at my website, jessicahadari.com. And when you go there, I actually have a free gift, and it's called Your Sold Out Programs. It's a free jumpstart kit, and it includes some videos and how to create attractive, irresistible events, how to avoid amateur mistakes when you're creating your workshops and trying to get your workshops and programs filled. It also includes an ebook for how to use Facebook to fill your workshops in private practice, and another downloadable guide that's action steps to fill your workshops. So anybody on the planet can take advantage of that at my website, and feel free as well. You can always contact me through my website. I love being accessible. So please reach out to me. I'm on Facebook. But I love teaching people how to do what I do. It's like 100 women come to my events every month, and I think I have a lot to say in regards to building community and filling events that are conscious and spiritually minded.
Yeah, you're definitely very good at filling the room. So I would highly recommend, if that's one of your goals, is to have workshops or to have small group programs that you need to fill, go to Jessica's website, which is Jessica, Jessica, Hadari, HADARI.com, for anybody who might be listening to this replay and not watching it. Yeah, and for sure, if you live in the Bay Area, so that's for anybody across the world, go to jessicahadari.com. But for anybody who might be in the Bay Area, especially if you live in Berkeley, Oakland, Hayward, anywhere in the Bay Area, East Bay, North Bay, South Bay, come and join a FEM Talks. And like Jessica said, that's just femtalks.org, FEMTALKS.org. And as she said, you get a free ticket to come. And just to let everybody know, those are 3 hours. And it's a 3-hour event, right, Jessica?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So 3-hour events. So, well, we're going to wrap it up here. It's been so wonderful to get to know you a little bit better, Jessica, and to have you here on the show. It's just, I'm so glad you said yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lisa. What you're creating with this show is just really incredible. It's been such a pleasure to collaborate with you and work with you. So I'm really appreciating you. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So I will see you at the next FEM Talks, which will be in now in June, right? So just in a few weeks here. For everybody else, whether you're watching live or in replay, please do feel free to ask Jessica any questions, engage with us. You can leave comments right below this video. It doesn't matter if you're watching in replay. That's one of the great things about this technology of Google Hangouts. That we can continue this discussion on women's leadership and what's important to you. We want to hear your thoughts, because people like Jessica and like myself want to cater to you and to help you shine in your brilliance, as Jessica has done so well with the FEM Talks alliance that she has created over the last 4 years. So once again, Jessica, thank you so much for being on the show, and we will see you very soon.
Thank you.
And thanks to everybody else for joining us here, whether you joined live or in replay. And just as a quick reminder, you can visit me as well at www.innerstatecoaching.com to download your free report and to learn more about my programs and services. And we'll see you all next time.